I'm in Cumbria. I'm Prof of Environment Society at University of Cumbria in the Institute for Science and Environment. So my job at the university is, well, as a professor, is of course to produce research and to bring in research income. And to also work outside of the university with a range of different organisations that enabled us to do those things, to build networks, to build research collaborations. So I also work for the IUCN. I chair their Rewilding Thematic Group, and I'm chair of IUCN Commission for Ecosystem Management in Western Europe. Wilder North is a concept which is looking at, I guess, how does conservation work and how might conservation work more effectively in the future. And I guess what tends to happen with conservation projects, or any kind of project for that matter, is it operates on often in silos and often across very short timescales. So the idea behind Wilder North was that we should have a much bigger vision, bigger spatially, but bigger temporally as well. And we should think about connections, not just across the landscape, but with different organisations and landowners that are involved in managing that landscape. So what we do is far more holistic and far more joined up, and then hopefully far more effective in terms of producing good conservation outcomes. But also moving beyond that kind of 4 or 5 year programme cycle and thinking about this in a much longer period of time, which is part of the ethos behind rewilding as well, that we need to think about longer timescales. But Wilder North is about just bringing together agencies, different actors, different organisations to really kind of work together on a landscape scale conservation.
My name is Dr. Alex Dittrich. I'm a senior lecturer and programme lead for zoology at the University of Cumbria. Currently I'm working on a number of projects in and around Cumbria that's geared towards biodiversity and how we can sort of build a more resilient environment for nature. Working with Cumbria Wildlife Trust and the Get Cumbria Buzzing project in association with some of our undergraduate students to monitor the rewilding of a disused golf course in the city centre. My role in this is basically working with the university and working with students to try and monitor what Cumbria Wildlife Trust have done and quantify that in terms of a real net gain for biodiversity. And one of the things that I've really found worthwhile over the last year is being able to involve undergraduate students and their projects in this work, to actually get students involved in learning all about these monitoring projects, get their skills up to par so that they can go out into the real world and maybe practice this craft elsewhere.
Funding is, you can't do research without funding. So, we as researchers, we need funding, and that can come in a variety of different sources. Sometimes it's important, particularly if you're an early career researcher, that you get some support from the university and there's some internal support to help you develop your research career. As you continue on that career pathway, there's an expectation, I guess, that you'll start to look for external funding. And that can be from a whole range of different kinds of agencies and organisations. So with Research England, we have the Natural and Environment Research Council, we have the Economic and Social Research Council, we have the Arts and Humanities Research Council. They can be really important sources of funding, but alongside that, there's a whole range of other ways in which we can get research. Private organisations, charitable funds. So it's about actually understanding the different requirements and criteria that different organisations have, but at the same time being true to your bid and not trying to just shoehorn your bid or your ideas into a particular funding pot. So it can take a little bit of time, I think, to find the right funding source for the research that you want to do. And that's absolutely part of that research kind of process, understanding what that research landscape looks like, understanding what's the best fit for what you want to do, and then crafting a bid which enables you, hopefully, to get the funding to do that work.
What I'm doing is I'm using the map as a reference, but then I'm confirming where we are with the GPS. The GPS then basically gives us an accurate measurement of where we were, rather than the predicted location of where we are. one of the pitfalls of this kind of surveying is this thing is really noisy, and you have to wear ear protection, which I'm wearing at the moment. You may not be able to see them on the camera, but I assure you I am wearing ear protection. So we've got the samples from the suction sampler that works a lot like a vacuum cleaner. It just pulls the insects off the grassland and it spits them out into this little container here. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to empty them into this net, and I'm going to pick out one specific taxa that I'm interested in, which is the leafhoppers and plant hoppers. They're a particularly good indicator species of the health of a grassland, indicating what kind of health you've got within that habitat. You know, you want a species that's diverse, but you also want a sort of manageable diversity as well. So they're ubiquitous throughout the grassland. They're relatively straightforward to ID. This is a puta that just enables me to suck those insects that are of interest off the net, so that I can take these back to the lab to identify. It gives me an opportunity to release those insects that I'm not interested in, so the bycatch can go back. So I'm being very, very selective.
Cities tend to be ignored when it comes to restoration rewilding work. And I think there's a lot of interesting work that we could do in urban and peri-urban settings that just bring a more natural environment into cities and give people an opportunity to engage with nature. And one of the big issues of our time has been that sense of disassociation, of removal from nature, and urban areas in particular are kind of good examples or bad examples of that. So I think Wilder North is important in terms of bringing wilder environments and more natural environments into urban areas and giving people the opportunity to engage with them. Because from that you get a whole range of benefits. You get human health benefits, you get ecosystem benefits, and you end up with people who actually start to value that environment. One of the projects that we're doing at the university which kind of really works in that area is the Back on Our Map, or BOOM project, which is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And it's a £2 million project which looks to use species reintroductions as a way of getting communities and individuals to engage with various aspects of conservation work and kind of broadly nature engagement. And the idea for the project is that we would work with communities who perhaps in the past haven't been involved in these kinds of activities or had the opportunity to spend any kind of meaningful time in nature. So we're working with communities in Barrow and along the south coast of Cumbria, but we're also working with Haverford Prison as well. I think our strategy is going to evolve based on our last Research Excellence Framework results, which cover the period of 2014 to 2021, where we showed some big improvements across the outputs, across impact and across environment as well. So I think what we need to do is build on that. We need to build on we need to bring in some more external funding. I think particularly working with some of the agencies that and funders that we talked about earlier. So Natural Environment Research Council, Economic and Social Economic Research Council, absolutely as part of that as well. And we need to get more staff active and involved and engaged in research. I see that absolutely as part of my job at the university to work with staff, particularly early career researchers, and really help them develop their research career and help them find a pathway. Because it can be quite daunting, I think, when you first start to work in a university, and alongside that teaching load and having to get to grips with that, you're also trying to develop your research career. So I think one of the things that the university does very well is provide that kind of support for early career researchers, particularly with support from the research office as well. So I guess in a nutshell, what's in the future for us is building on what I think is a good research platform at the moment, but absolutely focusing on bringing in some more external research income, and also working with a range of international partners as well.
You get these things under a microscope, and they certainly do their fair bit to sort of inspire people, and that's one of the things I try and do, is try and promote people to sort of look at things from less of a sort of sizist kind of perspective, and actually give things the time under a microscope, have a really, really close look at them, and you soon sort of build that appreciation. And that's part of what this project is about, really, at the Swifts, is to try and inspire members of the local community into appreciating those invertebrate groups, those important pollinators and other things. And the way that you can do that is through getting people to have a real close look at what's there, you know.